Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. This is where we talk about how things get better, not just which side is worse. So let's get after it. Everybody's talking free speech. Me too. And a lot of it is evidence of the problem we face. Wildly inaccurate, rage bait. I think we're being distracted from the real speech issue in our society. And I think it's a great time to have it. Now look, you can like or not like Disney's decision on Kimmel. But until I see proof of actual government coercion of their decision, this is about Disney making a business decision about its brand and the responsibility it has to respect the desires of its audience and its license, okay? Yes, Trump said Kimmel would be next. Now, is that correlation or is it causation? The answer to that comes in proof. I don't care how you feel about it, all right? That doesn't do anything for me. We don't have the proof before us. Maybe we will. Then I'll change my analysis. What we do know is that the outrage at ABC Disney for what he said was more impressive to them than his ratings, apparently. Now, you can argue if they made the right choice, but they had the right to make that choice. And we all know in this business that this is what you sign up for. And no, it is not a First Amendment issue until you have proof of government intervention, because the First Amendment doesn't apply to private industry in this context. It's a restriction on government regulation, okay? And yes, I agree, the president threw gas on this situation again by saying this.
On network television, there is a licensing. I'll give you an example. I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. They're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
Reckless, not helpful. Okay? The basis of having a license is not on whether or not you are good to Trump. Okay? And that feeds exactly the suspicion that I started with here about Kimmel. But again, I don't play the same rules that the president does. I know that's weird. He's the one with all the power. You think he'd have the integrity standard. But I need the proof that somebody acted on what he's saying there. And when I have it, I'll be all over it. We don't have it, okay? And short of that, the speculation to me is rage bait. And I get that it works. And that takes me to the real problem, because this is distracting us from the real fight to have. If you're concerned about government influence and corporate influence on what you get to see and hear, this is the least of your problem. Social media is the battlefield. First, there has always been some level of government oversight into the media. Believe me, okay? I've worked at broadcast, I've worked at cable, I've worked everywhere. And all the broadcasters, ABC, all of them, need an FCC license, and there are strings on it. Now, those strings are almost never pulled. I think one license has been pulled because of what a station would or would not talk about, literally ever, all right? But we're all aware of the influence, okay? And believe me, people who've been in this business are not strangers to politicians calling bosses and letting it be known that they're not happy about things, okay? That is not unique to the Trump administration. Cable has its own guardrails, legal and regulatory, but not social media, not really. So now the biggest influence and the worst influence on our society is run by the richest companies, okay? Disney is nothing compared to Elon. Disney is nothing compared to Meta. And they are headed by the richest men. And they get almost no requirements. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? You thought something was going to come from those hearings that they had about the Biden stuff when they brought the tech bros in there? Nothing happened to them. Nothing. And you know why? Because they're the biggest and they're the richest. That's why. Now, there is none of the regulation that exists for anywhere else in media, in social media, despite more of us getting our information and our feelings from them, okay? More than from TV and print, probably combined. Why? The Internet Decency Act, which was created in 1996, almost 30 years ago, before the algorithms, before AI, before really this flood of podcasts, Social media companies are not liable, Section 230. Why? Because it was seen as unfair to make them publishers like NewsNation or ABC or CNN or Fox. Because, you know, they just build the stadium and then everybody comes in there and says whatever they say. It's different. They're not developing the content the way I do as an employee for NewsNation. Okay, that was the assumption 30 years ago. And I say it's changed, okay? Look, our latest example, right? Charlie Kirk's assassin was indoctrinated, radicalized on social media sites. That is our best understanding at this time. And we see this again and again and again. We saw it with terrorism. We see it with jihadis. We see it with every negative influence in society. Okay, it's all going on there, and it is all unchecked. Yeah, you got kiddie porn stuff, and you got human trafficking now, but I'm talking about the things that affect our dialogue, okay, that affect the fabric of our politics. Nothing. And the big tech companies don't really self-police because it's not in their financial interest. Okay? They put their ads around what's provocative. They develop software to look at content and figure out what will be most provocative in it as a short. What is that? Okay? So, in the wake of Kirk's assassination, right? China, Russia, Iran reportedly all use their bots and their tech to stoke what is happening where? Not here, right? Not here, not on ABC, not on World News Tonight, not on Anderson Cooper's show, on social media. Why? Because they know it's unchecked. And they foment political division, and they incite violence. This is the time to have the conversation. I don't love the idea of government being involved, especially this administration, but there is a new variable here. The assumption that they just build the stadium is no longer true. With the algorithms and AI, artificial intelligence, they now have capabilities that they never imagined 30 years ago. So here's the metaphor. It used to be they build the stadium, but, you know, everybody fills it. You know, they can't control who fills it and what they do once they're in the stadium. Now, they decide where people sit. They decide what kind of priority you have and how much exposure you have to the game. They make choices. They curate content. They amplify content. They sell you stuff on the basis of what you say and what you take in. They prioritize. They place ads. That is not content manipulation. That is not content, maybe not creation in terms of writing it. But if you're going to amplify it, decide what trends, decide what would, base it on what's most provocative, aren't you getting pretty close than just being the person who built the stadium? The original idea was that they were just the pot, and everybody else brings the ingredients. So they're not really responsible for the flavor of the soup. Let's change the metaphor, not the stadium, not the pot. Now, they know who's bringing what ingredients into the pot. They decide how much of the different ingredients they will include. Are they not now more of a chef than a pot? That is the discussion that I want to have with somebody who understands the tech. His name is Russell Huang. Now, why would I know somebody as sophisticated as this guy? I don't. But my best friend is in this business. And he said, if you want to know what you do not know, talk to Russell. He is the co-founder of a company called Glimmer Fix that lets users create content for social media using AI. Brother, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
So help us understand, for dummies, okay, what you make of the idea that social media companies, whether it's X or any platform you want, that they no longer should get the benefit of the assumption that they have no control over the content, that they're just the pot, they're just the stadium. They don't have any control over content, so you can't hold them accountable. What's the reality about their abilities?
Oh, Chris, originally a social media platform like Facebook, when it started 2008, was still mostly about your actual social network. But starting around 10 years ago, companies began to use AI to decide what goes into your feed and what they recommend. And this year, Meta announced that for the first time, over half of the content that people see on Instagram is delivered by AI recommendations. The same thing for Facebook, 30%. On TikTok, I think the For You page is essentially 100% AI curated. So at this point, they're pretty much providing you with everything that you see on the feed, even if it's not written or built by them.
So they may not be writing it, but they know what is being written, and they are putting it before you. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, so they have control over just about everything related to how it gets shown to you. They don't make content usually, but they have extremely complicated algorithms, which are huge math equations, and they take in the data that you give it by interacting with the app. Anytime you go on an app like Instagram or TikTok, it starts recording information about how you're using that app. So not just what you press like on, but also how long you spend watching the video and every letter that you type into the search bar, even if you delete that letter, even if it doesn't look like it's saved anywhere, that's the kind of thing that they are able to track. And all of this stuff is thrown into the pot, and they use that to decide what they should show you at any given time.
So you're saying that they are deciding through the algorithms and the advent of AI, they are making subjective business choices of what to put before people from the universe of content available.
Yes, the decision is not made by a person. It's made by an equation, but that equation has been built and very carefully calibrated by these companies.
And don't they also use that technology to assess the provocative nature of content and where to put their ads and what will get the most resonance?
So certainly for ads, you can target ads by all sorts of things, what your job is, where you live, any kind of interests that you've expressed. They are able to target very precisely the kinds of demographics that see ads. And I think in many cases, they will tell you that content decisions are sort of divorced from ads and other decisions like that. They are all kind of using the same data soup, though. So it's hard to
But
know
how can
exactly what is
content
going
be
on.
divorced from it? I mean, what else would the algorithm assess in terms of the stickiness of what it's offering if it's not the content?
It's a great question, Chris.
It has to be that, right? I mean, look, you're the genius. But what I'm saying is, don't you think there should be some responsibility that comes with that? If you were running the site, okay, and I am constantly looking for information, you can make it very clear that I am very receptive to information about how to overthrow the government. There is a decision to enable an algorithm or AI to feed me more of that, and you would know that that's what it is feeding me, yes or no?
So I've just recently co-founded a startup, as you said, which is based on stories that are written by people and which are made into an interactive experience using AI. So I obviously believe these technologies have amazing capabilities and can do great things. Mm-hmm. But yes, it is clear that if they wanted to, they could know what the content that they're showing you is. They don't actually do this because they don't want to know. But we encounter issues ourselves sometimes with content that we would like to, not allow, and we get rid of it.
Because you have integrity. But Glimmerflix is part of the future of getting people who understand the technology to enable it for people, and you get to choose who you do that for. But Here, it's about volume. And because look, here's my central question, Russell. Are they able to make a determination, human determination, that, hey, Cuomo loves content about overthrowing the government, but I'm not just giving him that stuff. You know, a lot of this stuff is like right up to the line and then over the line of illegality. I'm going to give them other stuff about, you know, they could make that choice, couldn't they?
Absolutely choose what they show people and when. That is well within their capabilities. Their capabilities are really amazing, and it's pretty unlikely to believe that they can't do that kind of thing if they want to.
And you sent me something about a recent interview with Zuckerberg was talking about exactly this and how AI is the future in terms of a lot of different ways. But one of them specifically that he highlighted is that in the future, a lot of the content will be AI generated and then placed by Zuckerberg or other platforms, which is exactly this kind of human determination. So you will decide what kind of content people get. You are creating the content.
Absolutely. When AI content is created, that content is being made by an algorithm again. But who has control over the algorithm at Meta? It's clearly Meta, right?
And why don't they get regulated? What's your best sense of why government hasn't said, hey, you're not the pot anymore, you're the chef. You know all the ingredients, you decide what the soup tastes like. You may not be bringing the ingredients, but you're deciding the mix. You're a chef. Why don't you think it's happened?
Well, I think that we don't have much of a consensus about how regulation should happen. As soon as we start talking about regulating, we see one side wants to regulate it this way, another side wants to regulate it that way. There's really just no reason for anyone to agree on that when, you know, as you mentioned, the people who run these companies have very strong incentives and a lot of money to avoid such regulation. I think that,
and they've done great with
Section 230 has been, you know, a very useful, and I think it was right when it was made. But it is a totally different world now, as you say.
Russell Huang, thank you for doing it the right way. I hope that Glimmerflix blows up and does great, because I know you're doing it the right way. And thank you for being candid about the reality. Appreciate you, brother. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. So think about that. So these guys avoid regulation by playing to the fact that we hate the idea of regulation. They then abuse the lack of regulation and feed us the exact kind of poison that gives them the biggest profit. You want to be pissed off about something. You want to be outraged about something. What it's doing to our kids, what it's doing to our dialogue. You know, we always say, oh no, it's us, it's choice. How is it just choice if they control your options? Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.